Yeah, as you just mentioned, I'm a media scholar by training, so my research interests basically include international communication, media sociology, sociology of news production, and also, of course, environmental communication. As you know, air pollution is not an academic problem per se. It's first and foremost a public issue related to people's lives. From the beginning of the 2010s, and air pollution started to attract a lot of media attention from domestic media and also from international media. And people started to worry about what is air pollution and what will be its impact or consequence for people's health and also for people's lives. As a media scholar, so I'm really interested in how air pollution as an emerging public issue or as an emerging environmental challenge is represented by mass media. Especially for those emerging public issues, people tend to know quite few about what is happening, what is going on. So mass media and also right now for social media, they are really crucial to popularize. They are really crucial to tell people what is going on in their, the symbolic environment. Mass media is a primary channel to create the symbolic environment. My task as a media scholar is to look at that particular symbolic environment to see its components and also to see how it evolves over time. Just give you one concrete example. I used to collaborate with some historian from the University of Oslo on a paper about how Chinese media cover air pollution or cover smoke using or employing the examples from the Western countries. London used to be famous, and also in China we have a particular term for that, fog city. And in the past few years, when Chinese media started to try to make sense of what is going on with China, what is going on with air pollution, they employ or they borrow the foreign past as a historical analogy to make sense of what is going on in China. And London and also some other cases, including rural area in Germany, were employed as an exemplar for China to frame the issue. By using the foreign past example, Chinese media try to show that actually air pollution is somehow the byproduct of the industrialization process. All other Western countries has already gone through that particular stage. Taking London as an example, the Great Smog in 1952 was rediscovered by Chinese news media to say that, see, look at what was happening half a century ago in London, and that is happening with China now, and we are going to fix the problem like London was doing in the past few decades. And one day London's today are going to be China's tomorrow. The mobilization of London as an exemplar is only a small segment or only a small part of the general media framing of air pollution in China. So if we look at how media frame air pollution in the past few years, we are going to come up with some conclusions. The first one is mass media are really important, even under tight control or even under censorship and self-censorship. Mass media in China are extremely powerful to bring new ideas about air pollution to China. If you go back 10 years ago, I guess you cannot say nobody, but the majority of Chinese, they did not know what is PM 2.5. But now if you ask anybody who is not an expert, who is not a scientist at all, but they know what is PM 2.5, they develop what we call a green vocabulary or green speak, including the idea of PM 2.5, AQI, air quality index, and also they know the upper limit of AQI is 500, and they know a lot of things. Secondly, as you may see, air pollution is not something which can hide from the public sight. So basically, everybody has a direct experience of what is going on in their neighborhood. So air pollution has become part of the daily manual of media coverage. Whenever there is a heavy smog, whenever some part of China is covered by a heavy smog, then there will be a lot of media attention about that. But one problem about that is news media, they always need to chase around something new. when air pollution became the daily routine of Chinese people, at the first beginning, people were really scary about the smog. About smog. But after a few years, people kind of get used to the situation, unless there is heavier smog. And otherwise, mass media won't devote as much media attention as they used to do. Last but not least, I think when we talk about Chinese media, we cannot only talk about the mainstream or the legacy media. Everybody knows that social media is gaining influence and also impact on a global scale. That's not exception with China. So basically, Xinlang Weibo, the Twitter-like social media platform in China, and also WeChat, something really something like WhatsApp. Basically, they become the primary social media platform for Chinese people, ordinary citizens or general public to engage with air pollution as something happening in their daily life and also as a public issue. So it's really important to look at what social media has done in the past few years. A lot of people at the beginning, started to complain about the situation, about the poor air quality. They use all kinds of creative memes and social media devices to talk about and to complain about poor air quality, to ask the government to do something to fix the problem. But but later, a lot of people believe social media can be used to do something else instead of simply complaining about the situation. Environmental NGOs and some other actors in the civil society, they try to use social media as a platform to kickstart the transparency of environmental related information like PM2.5 at the beginning. It is not publicly available, but right now, of course, it's publicly available. In terms of transparency, we still have a lot of things to do. And also, in terms of try to engage the public to do something with environmental issues, social media could become an important platform for information disclosure and also for mobilization. To put it simply, a green app is any kind of cell phone applications which can be used by either ordinary citizens or by environmental NGOs to deal with some parts of environmental issues. And in my case, I will talk about a few applications. As you may know, everybody has a lot of applications or apps on your phone, right? And apps has already become part of our daily life. And I try to see, actually, there's some connection between those daily used apps and also the general public issues about environmental protection. In my talk, I'm going to talk about how environmental NGOs use the apps to try to kickstart the transparency of information disclosure. And I try to make a distinction between two kinds of public participation. The first kind is what we call the right to know. Everybody has the right to know some information, especially those information closely related to their health, closely related to their environment, and how those applications could be used to aggregate all information and for the general public to learn, to know about the air quality, about the general environment. The second category of public participation is the right to act. When you learn something, especially when you learn the air quality is so poor, sometimes people try to see what can we do? Can we do anything to fix the situation? So in some cases, people are enabled to do so. Sometimes they can retweet the information provided by those apps on social media to exert public pressure on those polluters to let them know that you are polluting our air, you are polluting our water. In this way, they can exert some impact on how we deal with environment. In a collective sense, I believe that's really important because nowadays air pollution and also some other environmental issues or environmental problems has become really widespread, not only for ordinary Chinese, but also for the general society. Recently, a colleague Recently, two colleagues from the University of Oslo and we collaborated and co-published an article about the idea of ecological civilization. The focus of that article is basically on how Chinese state and also how Chinese state media articulate the idea of ecological civilization. Sometimes I think the problem is for ordinary Chinese, they believe or they tend to conceive ecological civilization as some kind of empty slogans. I think the really important issue is how China can turn that into some kind of abstract ideas, into practical guidelines we can use to talk about environmental challenges. And right now, a lot of people, especially in the West, people are kind of concerned or worried what will be the environmental prospects in terms of what we have to deal with, the global problems of climate change, global warming, and also air pollution included, some other environmental challenges. I believe at this moment, ecological civilization certainly has a close connection to Chinese philosophy when we see that we need to establish a harmonious relationship between nature and man, or nature and people. But based on that, we still have a long way to go to try to put that into practice, to try to transform the ancient or the traditional idea about ecological civilization to something we can apply, because anyway, the situation we are facing right now is dramatically or entirely different from what we see a few hundred years ago. It is considered as a political or even ideological guidelines, treated as a political or even ideological guidelines or doctrine promoted by the central government and the top Communist Party leaders in the past few years. I think we have a beginning. I think at the beginning, the idea of ecological civilization is promoted to deal with, in a discursive way, to deal with how shall China cope with the environmental challenges when we have air pollution, when we have some other environmental issues or challenges. And the idea of ecological civilization, as you might well aware, is promoted as a construct between industrial civilization and ecological civilization. Civilization is an interesting term in China. I think it's really difficult for you to translate something like 生态文明 in Chinese into English, because we know that civilization in English means something else. But basically in Chinese official discourse, they perceive ecological civilization as something different, and also as something could serve as an alternative to what we call the traditional path of industrialization. In that official discourse, the Western countries, especially UK, European countries, and also the US, they all have gone through a certain path of industrialization. The industrialization really lead to the environmental degradation and all the related problems. So in the official discourse in China, ecological civilization is treated as some remedy, treated as an alternative to the traditional path. Basically, when China has the 3 decades of high-speed growth and also the economic development, we start to wonder whether we should walk down the path of industrialization, whether we should follow the example set by some other Western countries. So I guess that's the starting point for the idea of ecological civilization. But as I just mentioned, I think for many Chinese, we still have some doubt, or we still think that ecological civilization is just something, it's just some empty slogans, which does not have so much relevance to the daily life. Especially considering the economic downfall and the trade war between US and China, people started to wonder how far the ecological civilization can go from now. So I guess the really important challenge is to turn the abstract ideas of ecological civilization to something we can apply to solve the environmental challenges. And also it could set some example if the global community can work together toward a better environment-friendly future.